So the Enneagram, this symbol, is an orthogonal symbol. And what does that mean? That means that this symbol is actually representing three very distinct systems or processes. And these processes or systems interact with each other, can influence each other, uh, and, and result in many different uh, manifestations of how your experience is happening and you're perceiving it. But in the interaction with each other, they don't alter what they are or how they function. They're independent of each other. And what's happened with the Enneagram of personality types, it's kind of flattened that. It makes everything kind of the same. It's one thing. And so it loses that sense of dynamism of these three processes or dynamics interacting with each other. So, the circle, quite often people say, well, the circle represents unity or wholeness, which is true. Okay? But if you experience presence, and I know most people that study work like this have had experiences of presence or unity or oneness, tastes of it. Very few people live in it 24/7. Okay? But to experience that sense of unity or oneness or presence, it's not an idea. It's not a emotional experience. It can give rise to ideas, it can give rise to emotional experiences, but in and of itself, it is something much deeper than that. And the closest experience there is in this world to consciousness is sensation, like body sensation, the actual tactileness of experience. Because to experience consciousness directly, to experience of oneself as this field of sensitivity, that experience is more like an in touchness, a direct, immediate in touchness with what's going on. And the physical sense of touch, of tactileness, of that's the closest that we have. A thought, any idea or thought doesn't approach that. Any emotion doesn't approach that. As a matter of fact, if you look at strong emotions like love, okay, love has this uh, whole wide range of affect that goes with it, feeling that goes with it. But when you're really experiencing love, there's that tactileness, there's that immediate in touchness with it. You can feel it happening within you, within the body, and within the mind, and within the consciousness. Okay? And it's the capacity to start discriminating those different medium with each other that help to lead us to the direct experience of what is it? What am I as consciousness? What is that experience? And the mind, regardless of all its attempts, uh, is not going to be able to describe that. It's of a whole different dimension of experience. So then this comes back to the phrase you can point at it, but you can't describe it. You have to experience it to know it. So that's the field. The circle represents the field of consciousness. It's often talked about as unity, because when one is experiencing consciousness immediately and directly, there's no uh, what you're perceiving, like this computer screen and this tree outside and all these things. The perception is that how I'm experiencing myself as this immediate, intimate in touchness that is more of a physicalness, uh, that is recognizable in everything as the same in touchness. There's no separation between there's no separateness in that field. There's no demarcation between me and the tree, even though the tree is distinct as a form. And, I see this hand and I know it's related to this body. And there's a distinctness of, of this form from the computer and what have you. The field itself is experienced as this immediate, in touch, substantial, medium. It's kind of like we call that, refer to that often as essence or presence. And that's like the protoplasm of reality. Just like everything in the body consists of protoplasm, everything we see consists of the protoplasm of existence. And that has a very recognizable experience. Although I don't want to get too weird here, get off the field, but uh, because everything is being rendered by our mind, it translates it into images and words so that our experience is available to our external consciousness. So we never really experience the purity of essence or consciousness. We're experiencing the body mind's best rendition of it. We're experiencing the echo of it. And yet it's possible to transcend that. So that's the circle. And if you're in that medium, you can't not notice there's dynamism within it. It's dynamic within itself. So there's a type of recognition that this is a field of dynamism and process and infinite possibilities. Okay. So it is of itself a orthogonal particular. And then you have the triangle, which represents force. And the Enneagram of personality types has really led us astray with knowing the triangle for what it is. And we're going to get into that specifically, but the triangle deals with force. And Gurdjieff looked at that, explained it through the law of three. And you have an active force, a passive force, and a reconciling force. And I refer to it as emergence, receptivity, and presence. But the thing to understand about the law of three and the triangle is these three forces are co-emergent. They exist in every experience. You can't have experience without these three forces being present. So the Enneagram gives you this symbol, this triangle that speaks to this. But what's happened is It has artificially separated them, and people see them as separate and connected. But this force is what is primarily responsible. Its function is to organize perception into experience. So we could sit here and just have pure perception, and that's part of our nature. That's part of what we are, is the capacity for pure awareness. And in pure awareness, there's no knowing. There's just perceiving. And it's kind of hard to imagine. Like I can see that tree, but in pure perception, it's like a baby. If you imagine a baby at 6 months of age, where it's starting to see forms and what have you, but it has no names for them. It sees shapes, but it doesn't know that that's green or that's blue. That hasn't developed yet. But there is awareness of shapes and faces and all of that type of thing. So that's kind of like pure awareness. Now, that awareness gets organized through human development. We have these capacities, and our awareness is then organized into there's me and that, and there's experience that happens between the two. You can't have experience without me and another, whether it's an idea or a person or a car or whatever. So I like to think of the triangle as the muscles in your eye. And depending upon the relationship between those three forces, that's what opens or closes the aperture. That's what contorts the lens in a certain way. So it is operating like that in the experience of consciousness. It is organizing experience in a certain way. So what you have with this thing is, if I was here at point 6, you see, if point 6 was the leading uh, force meeting my experience directly, because objective reality, me meeting objective reality, means that receptivity is more forward in my experience. Okay, but these other two elements like presence and action, activity, active or emergence are also there. But which one is more dominant of those two? I could be meeting experience with receptivity and have presence as the second dominant force and emergence as the third. So there are 6 combinations of how any experience is met through this combination of organizing forces. Okay? And that is primarily what gets fixated. We develop this sense. It's not choice. It's a matter of how we respond to our environment. That lens, we start seeing the world primarily through a certain structuring of force that organizes our experience. So we lose the fluidity of how these forces can reorient, recombinate themselves to meet experience according to what reality needs, what's actually showing up. So I get in this habit of I show up with uh, the active force primary and presence secondary and receptivity the least dominant. And that becomes my habitual mode of perception. And so that's what starts creating this tendency to interact with the world from this perspective. And then that will eventually lead to the external face of being a personality. This is This is the culmination of this field and this particular type of force combination, and then the energy that's involved, and all of that stuff leads to my personality. And the hexad deals with how energy moves through this system. And it is the hexad and the way that movement is happening through this system that drives the whole process of manifestation and transformation. But you see, one of the things that has been lost is the Enneagram, the force and the energy have been conflated. It's all pretty much seen as energy, but it's not. They're very different. It's like if you think of gravity as a force, okay, you can harness the force of gravity to create energy to do things with. But that doesn't make that force energy in and of itself to run a motor. So take a moment and just sit with this information of these are three very distinct processes or functions. And sit with or maybe the better thing is the question of, instead of looking at personality, what would change, what would be possible if we looked at what organizes our experience that finally shows up as personality? Because it's understanding that can really support real change and transformation. So here's the Enneagram symbol I use because I think it speaks to these are three independent processes and systems. And the triangle is the most dominant because it is the first dynamic. It represents the original dynamics of how perception gets organized. And perception has to get organized for there to be experience. Otherwise, there's just perception.